the final moment of Pocket Gamer Seattle 2023 is a panel discussion now. And we're going to be looking at what are indies. Is there still space for indies in the industry as it is now? So can I welcome to the stage our participants, please?
The biggest problem of being so small is that you do the microphone like this and I have to jump to do this.
I couldn't reach down.
It's the problem of being tiny.
Perfect.
Hi guys, hi everybody. So we're gonna have our last panel of the conference, I would say. No, we have a panel on the other track, but the last one of this track. I'm Toledo, I'm the head of creative community at PlaySense, and I would like to start this panel with you guys introducing yourselves. Nobody can introduce yourselves better than yourselves, right?
So I'm assuming we're starting on that side.
Come on, Scott.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott with Rogue Games. We are a game publisher that work across mobile, PC, console, and I'm based here in Seattle, and I'm happy to be here talking with you.
Hey everyone, I'm Armin from Kuuasema. We are a originally mobile-focused game developer out of Helsinki, Finland. I'm based in Germany and happy to be here.
My name is Solon Bucholtz. I'm the founder and CEO of LBC Studios. We're a mobile free-to-play developer and publisher based up in Vancouver, British Columbia, and also happy to be here.
Wow, I am the odd one out here. So my name is James Portnow. I have been a game designer for about 20 years. I've worked on games ranging from the Call of Duty series to League of Legends to Farmville. More of you probably know me as an animated bean person on the internet since I started a show called Extra Credits. And, I retired a couple years back, got bored, spun up a new studio. And so I guess that's why I'm here.
And also because we like different points of view. You can be the bad guy on the panel, like the odd one.
Perfect. I'll do it. I'll just disagree with whatever anyone else says.
Deal. That's it. As we're talking about indie games, I think let's start with the basics. How do we define indie game developers nowadays? Like, is it still the same thing? Did the ethos change? What do you think? Hard, right?
I mean, to me, as long as you're making games for a reason other than just pure profit, that's indie games to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think any game where the purpose is to express creativity as opposed to a bottom line could be considered an indie game.
Also, if you're in the console world or whatever, there's 3 companies that own everything when you go all the way up. If you're not part of one of those 3 hierarchies, you're probably an indie.
Yeah, it's a tough one. For us, when I started our studio, there wasn't a label. We just had purpose and passion behind the product we were building. I think the challenge of that is we still consider ourselves fiercely independent, but we're also running a business. So, finding that line where you're not beholden or accountable to purely the pressures of running a business, and you're still able to pursue the passion and purpose of why you started the company, I think that makes you independent.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with everyone, and I think the important factor is that you're still maintaining your independence, and you're not running after each trend or every new trend, and you kind of maintain your heritage to some extent.
So can we say there is still a space for indie game developers in this market, especially with all these big acquisitions, AAA market expanding to mobile as well? We can see buyouts all the time. Can we still say that there is a fruitful and healthy indie game environment?
I think there is, and I think it's up to each of the indie to kind of decide for themselves whether they want to maintain that. I mean, let's be honest. If you're a very successful indie and the check is big enough, you're probably going to fall for it. Yeah.
No, I was just going to totally agree that the buyouts actually show us that there is clearly a market for indies, right? Not only is there a space for indies, I think it's bigger, and I think the possibilities for where you can go and where you can be acquired by are bigger now than they've ever been.
I mean, I did a little bit of research. The indie games market, as defined by Steam, is $2 billion as of 2020. So I think that's only growing. And to these guys' point, I think indie is a place where I think a lot of big AAAs look for talent and look for creativity. If you're a big AAA, you're making Madden Football 23. Guess what? The next year you're probably going to make Madden 24 because it's making a profit, and your shareholders want to see that profit. If you're an indie developer, you're controlled by your creativity. Your creativity and how much you want to put that into your game is going to limit what kind of game you're making, as opposed to your shareholders.
Yeah, and I also agree. I think there's absolutely a space for independent developers for several reasons. Even in we'll call it the consolidation of gaming studios in mobile, many of those consolidators, their ethos is actually to a degree to keep that independence, to allow the studios to continue to thrive and be successful at what they're at. I'm not saying that's the case in every scenario, but the reason I think that exists is the reality of our industry is it's tough to make successful games. And, it's much easier for consolidators to buy successful games than it is to go make their own. So, if you follow your purpose and your passion, and I think there's a lot of underserved markets, a lot of underserved audiences, and there's a lot of room for independent people to explore those spaces and find success, you'll be able to thrive.
Yeah, there was something you commented that it's deeply connected with the next question. It is hard to make successful games. I think if we can agree with something here is that it's not an easy market. It's extremely saturated, and it's hard to be successful in general. So what can indies do, especially when it comes to market, user acquisition, what can they do to actually stand out in the market? Is there a way still for them to stand out without having to connect with a bigger publisher or to be buy out by someone? What could they do?
One element is to be creative, and not on the creative side of the game, but also kind of, where are you located? Example, Stumble Guys, been acquired by, what are they called nowadays? Scopely, but nowadays Scopely nowadays is Saudi Arabian, right? I mean, they were sitting in a town, I don't know, 600 kilometers north of Helsinki, where probably the cost of living is, half of what it is in Helsinki, and they just had the environment there to do it, and they have been creating to create that environment, both for the team, but then also for the product.
So I'll look at it slightly differently. Obviously you have to make a great product that connects with your audience and with your player base. But I think even, the big players are recognizing the value of community. So for us as a developer and publisher, we built arguably the world's most popular cannabis game. And I'll be honest, like the very first day we launched it, I was down at 420 in Vancouver handing out stickers. Why? Because I had no idea if it was going to work, and I had no money to spend on marketing. We're 25 million players later, and thankfully we can spend money on marketing quite a bit. But the reality is those little things you do connect you with your community and give you a sense of what they value. So I think start the dialogue, find out what works. Don't just build what you think works. Focus on your community, and they might actually be your biggest supporters in free arenas versus just paid user acquisition from the mobile space, at least.
And I kind of have 4 points because that one is key. Like, first off, I would say find a market hole, right? Like, don't compete with traditional first-person shooters in our current market, right? Look for something that hasn't been done, that has an underserved market, especially if you can find a community out there that loves that thing already. And so look for your market hole. Second, find non-traditional ways to market it, because user acquisition cost today is utterly ludicrous. You need to find something other than paid acquisition, whether it's handing stickers out on the street, finding Facebook and Instagram groups that are passionate about this thing, having a interesting Twitter, whatever it is. Discord's a big one these days too, but find your community, find non-standard ways to market it, reach out to streamers and all those sort of things. And then on the development side, I would say there are sort of two big ones, but the biggest one I see for indies is just scope. Make sure that you are putting a lot of things in the sequel bucket. I have a whole, well, now it's an actual folder. It used to be a literal folder, but it's now a folder on my computer that I just label for the sequel. There's going to be a lot of stuff you want to do in your game that on an indie budget, you're not going to be able to fit in that first game, and you have to ship. So just find what the core of your game is, make that as good as possible, and ship that. And then lastly, figure out what your team's good at. Sometimes you have a team that has some great artists on it, and maybe not as good programmers, or a technical whiz, and all you can do is stick figures, or you've got a great designer. And build your game around your team, because those are the people who are going to have to stay passionate about it, and those are the resources you have. So as an indie, as you're approaching it, those are the 4 things I would start sort of thinking about in this market.
You want to add anything, Scott?
I would mirror what these gentlemen said. I think if the old adage of you're big and slow, then if you're small and nimble, take advantage of that nimbleness. So start to engage with your community really early. I was talking with some folks earlier, and I said you're 7 months away from your vertical slice. Okay, you should have a Steam page. You should have Discord set up. You should already start that engagement and conversation, because if you put something up and you think it's great, but your entire community thinks it sucks, bad news. You need to follow your community, because they're the ones that are going to make the game be big. You could think you have a great idea and you make a game for yourself. Fantastic. If you want to sell it, you need to listen to your community.
My idea of having conflicting images didn't work. They all agree. Hard as hell. But something, it wasn't my original question, but something popped up in my head, which is, okay, so a lot of indie developers, they're extremely afraid of reaching out to the community from the get-go, because they think they're going to be copied, or that some bigger studio will take their idea, run with it, they have more money. You see that day in, day out, that people hold on for their ideas like it's their beautiful baby until it's shipped, and then it's too late. So my question is twofold. This one is, what is the advice that you give for people to let go of this fear of being copied? And is the community, is the audience on the side of the underdog?
I'm going to answer your first one, because that one's really easy. Ideas are incredibly cheap, and execution is incredibly hard. So I'll give you a personal experience story. When we had the idea for Empire, we're like, this is the most top secret idea. I had lawyers draft NDAs. I went around to consultants. I made them sign. The guy we actually went with laughed at me when I put it in front of him. He's like, I'm not signing that. He's like, I don't care about your idea. I'm not going to build it. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And he told me ideas are cheap and execution's hard. I have had so many people come to me while we were building that game say they were going to build the exact same thing. None of their games are on the market. They don't even exist. So if you got an idea and you're afraid of your community stealing from you, I'd encourage you to flip the lens and actually look at your community as supporting you. And the reality is, most people that have the idea actually just want to play the idea. So if you're the one that's going to execute on it, they're going to be the ones that support you to play it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Ideas are dime a dozen, 100 for a dime, 1,000,000 for a dime. It doesn't matter. Everybody, okay, you have a game about shooting people and it's taken from the first person. Guess what? There's 1,000,000 games like that, and there'll be 1,000,000 more. But the difference between the ones that are successful and are not are the execution and the concepts behind them.
And truth is, especially for big publishers or AAA or whatever, everybody wants to build their own ideas until your idea is worth $1 million. So, until you get it out there, nobody cares about cloning your game. So don't worry about it. You're much better off making an inroad into your community.
Yeah, I was just, thinking the presentation we had earlier, and the concept and the ideas of hidden object games. To me, hidden object games have been like, I don't know how long have they been around, for 20 years. The concept to me is like the utmost boring thing there is, like staring at the screen and like looking for objects, right? Yet we see that there is like games that making like, I don't know how much money in revenue each month, right? Fan base is there, community is there. The idea is old, but it works.
But that's a great example of the execution thing. I have seen lots of hidden object games that don't work because they were poorly executed. There's still something to do in it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There was a second part to your question, I think, about the community.
Yeah, before you go to the second, I just want to say, the other thing I also noticed is that even if people try to make the same game, because the execution is so different, you end up getting two different games. It's never the same thing. It's not the same team. It's not the same mindset, and it ends up becoming different ideas. Well, example is how many match 3 games we have in the market.
And that actually is part of the perfect segue to your second question when it comes to community. If somebody cloned my game today, the community would be in an uproar because you've actually built that relationship with your community, and they're actually going to continue to support your game, provided you continue to give them a good experience and new content, and don't just try to financially reward yourself through it. So you asked about the community, I think, in the sense of, are they your biggest supporter? Was that the question?
Yeah, if they are supporting the other.
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, don't be afraid. We look at data all the time, and data tells one part of the story, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So we actually poll and survey our community all the time. We actually vest them in the success and reward them for communicating back to us. And obviously get a large enough sample size that you're not making product decisions because one person's really passionate. But it goes a long way. You actually learn a lot about your player base, and what you think your game or who you think your game is for is often not the case.
They love getting quiet. So I have a follow-up on this. We talked before about the freedom that indie developers have and how they can be innovative and different from everything else. But a lot of indie developers, they also have the temptation of trying to do that genre of games or the kind of games that are commercially successful because they want to survive. They want to build a company that is profitable. So what is the balance there, and what is your suggestion for people to keep being innovative and being new and thinking outside the box, but at the same time running away from that, trying to fit on a mold to get the right publisher or to be successful commercially?
I would say if you want to make a game, number one, make sure you are absurdly, ridiculously passionate about the idea. Speaking as somebody who's made games and worked with games for 25 years, the moment you're like, I'm not real sure if this project's going to make it, you're not going to make it. You need to have 110% commitment to your project or it will show. The second half of that is if you're not going to fully commit, find a partner that will fully commit and figure out what you do really well, and then you do that. Trying to do everything for everybody is going to lead to utter failure.
No, I 100% agree with this. And then just on the publisher side, just figure out your elevator pitch, right? This is useful for a lot of reasons, but figure out how you can summarize your game to your audience, to a publisher, in a couple of sentences. Because if you can't do that, it's going to be hard to convey it to anyone. And you need to, right? Especially if you're going to be doing something innovative.
And speaking as a publisher who sees thousands of games each week, your idea is not that creative. I will tell you, the devil lies 100% in the details. I can see 100. It's a roguelike, a Metroidvania that scrolls right to left and has a cute character. Okay, great. That's neat. Where's the detail? Where's the one piece of gameplay that's going to be unique that I can focus in on? If you don't know that, you're not ready to talk to a publisher.
I might give a conflicting answer here.
Yes.
Let's go.
Thank you. I went.
But let me think about it. So it depends. It depends what your goals are. Like, I mean, the reality is most people get into games because they're passionate about what they're doing. But if you're also trying to if this is part of your why in your life, like, time is incredibly precious. You don't have much of it, so make sure you're spending your time on what you want to spend your time on. And ultimately the reality is it's also expensive to live. So, if this is your business passion, it does have to be financially successful as well. So I do agree you have to be incredibly passionate about what you're working on, but that doesn't mean you know all the right answers to build a great business. So I would plan and follow, the data and the process and make sure that you don't just jump off a cliff because you're so passionate about your idea, but there's no chance that it's going to have any commercial viability. You're a creative person, so come up with that next idea and try to find the balance where your idea and the business can make sense so that you don't end up as one of 1,000 projects on a publishing doc. So strike that balance. That would be my conflicting opinion of it. The other side, though, too, is publishing, we self-publish, so we're incredibly fortunate we haven't had to be one of those products on the docket. I think you got to strike that balance, right? Time is precious. You do have to be passionate about it. I can also speak about what not being passionate about it looks like and how that can go really, really wrong. Hempire was incredibly successful, and then we went through a bit of an identity crisis. Like, what studio are we? Are we a weed game studio? So we built another weed game. We weren't passionate about it. We just thought it's what our audience wanted. Spent a lot of money, and that game doesn't exist.
I think that's actually a really good point. I think if you're a game developer and you're getting into game development to make money, you're in the wrong industry. There's a million other industries you could go into and pretty much guarantee, okay, I know I do A plus B and it equals C. Game development is not A plus B equals C. Every AAA studio is spending $100 billion on their next game. When they still don't know if it's going to be a hit, they will tell you it's not an A plus B equals C kind of business.
And especially, it's even with the same skills, whether you're an artist, a programmer, whatever. You go into bank security software, you're going to make more dollars per hour by a huge margin than you are in games. So it's got to be what you love.
Yeah.
Armin, do you want to add anything?
I was going to add that I think also what is important that you kind of be on the lookout and be open to change, right? And one of the examples is Supercell. They started with Facebook gaming, and they pivoted into something totally different at that stage, right? And everybody at that point was like, "What are you guys doing? The future is in Facebook gaming." We all know the story about how that went, but they're a bunch of people that are super passionate about, but they're also super passionate about how does it perform and what are the metrics and all of that, right? And they will start 15 games and kill 14, 16, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
kill almost one nobody knew about.
Yeah. And they started at some point and didn't have the monies available, so that's one approach to keep in mind too.
And I think it goes back also to the community that you guys talked before. If you have a super innovative idea and you're testing with your community, the chance of success gets hand in hand with that. It goes in a cycle, right? Follow up on this. I say, we saw talk earlier. Earlier today, talking about prototype everything and how important is iteration. How do you incorporate that, and how would you advise other indie developers to incorporate that profile is connecting to the testing?
Yeah, I'll speak for us as a studio. So we tried building games in genres we had no space being in. We were not experts in it. We spent last year determining what are we good at, what makes us unique in the mobile gaming space. And for us, we took apart our simulation engine, realized that it's actually quite powerful. So back to prototyping. Before we even build a new game now, we spend an incredible amount of time market testing for new audiences and new themes, making sure that we're finding niche markets that are underserved and have scale in terms of marketing. I think too much focuses on the game itself, but not actually being able to scale it profitably. So for us, that's what we do. That starts with a creative test. So we'll identify themes that thematically fit within our engine from a design perspective, from audience perspective. Then we'll go test those themes with creative tests, drop them to a survey, see what those CPMs and click-throughs look like. Then we'll whittle that down, and then we'll actually do a pass on the engine to make sure that this top performing theme actually fits, and then we'll build the game. But that's us.
But having said that, I think you're only able to do that because you have been successful prior. I mean, if you think you're like the indie guy that, has a bunch of people doing that, then it's going to be somewhat challenging to do that process that you just described.
Okay.
Number one, having the resources from the people doing it, and B, the money, right?
Fair. Okay, so first game, we sat around a kitchen table and we were really, really passionate.
So I'm just going to throw in that it is never too early to start iterating. Basically, for me, right, I will write up a GDD, and then I'm really good at self-delusion, so I'll go sleep, and then the next day I'll wake up, and I'll pretend I will tell myself someone else wrote this and has pitched it to me, and I'll start redlining and be like, this is stupid, this idea is terrible, all this stuff. There's a lot that you can actually get out of the way in a meeting, in a GDD, before you even start coding, have one person who's like upping your burn rate for art or any of that. There's a lot you can do to start iterating early. So the faster you can get to that, the faster that you're going to get to what you actually want to build, and the better it's going to be.
I like prototyping. I think they're great. Find the fun. If your game isn't fun at a prototype phase, adding nice art and flashy graphics and nice sound is not going to make the game fun. It's just going to make it not fun with nice graphics and nice art and nice sound.
But there is one indie studio. This is horrible because I don't remember the name of the indie studio. I do remember the game though, but they have done the same thing twice, and I thought it was extremely interesting. What they did is, instead of creating the game, they started putting concepts on TikTok and getting how people reacted to that, and then changing the game based on the comments of what the audience was telling them to do, even before they developed anything. So when they did a Kickstarter with the game, they got their target in 2 hours because everybody that was on TikTok went there. So yeah.
Community.
Yeah, it's everything together. It's the community, the iteration, everything in one go does a good recipe, which comes to my next question, which is, how important is social media and the relationship with media in general for indie developers, and how would you advise people to start creating this constant work with social media and media, as we're a pocket gamer and we have media as well? How would we develop this relationship?
So I'm just going to jump in and say it's a full-time job for somebody.
Oh yeah, then some.
Like, don't think that if you're in India, especially if you're a solo dev, get a friend, get somebody at least who spends full-time. Better if you can get a professional, but it will kill your productivity if you're trying to handle all of your social media and trying to develop your game and push it forward. So just know it's a full-time job.
Yeah, but I mean, I think going back to the word we keep saying through this whole talk is community, right? I think when you guys come up with the idea of a game that you're incredibly passionate about, you're also believing, and rightfully so, that there's a community out there that wants to play that game. I think also locally, find the people that are passionate about helping build your vision as well, and those will be the people that help out. I think you just mentioned this, start social media sites early, start talking about what you're doing early, get people talking, because yes, managing it is more than a full-time job. The people talking about it will do it for free.
Yeah, and I think events, now I'm going to do a bit of promotion for Pocket Gamer, where you can actually come and have, the pitches, and you can get free feedback. Take advantage of it. Why not, right? I mean, yes, it might require some travel to get here, but you have a good community that will give you feedback.
And I think we also talk a lot about who your audience is and who's going to play your game. One thing I'll say, and I can't say that for every city. Our studio is in Vancouver. There are several game studios in Vancouver. Some bought by large companies, some a little bit smaller. The building the game side of the industry is also incredibly collaborative. It really is. So if you need help and you need advice, I know everyone comes here and they do talks, but if you have studios in your city where you are, I would be shocked if they wouldn't be willing to open their doors and help out and provide feedback and help. I know if any of you end up in Vancouver, reach out.
Yeah, if you're local, there's a community called Seattle Indies. You can find the Facebook group. They're excellent. They do stuff at PAX every year. They have regular meetups. If you need any help, Seattle Indies is a great place to go.
In fact, slight plug for Seattle Indies, they're actually hosting an event tonight at 7 o'clock. If you'd like to come Patty or I can help you out.
Yeah, we will share everything after it became a propaganda shout out stuff.
One of just to touch on your point, social media is absurdly good to have and get it going early. Again, as a publisher, part of my job is looking through Twitter, and I can tell you I've signed 2 games where the guy just put up this is a simple animation test, but it was just so cool that I reached out to him, started talking about it, and kind of learned more about the game, and we ended up funding the game, and it was based off of a single animated GIF that he put up on his Twitter.
Yeah, and just there are disco like Seattle Indies. Finland has the IGDA Finland that also has meetups every month. I think every region that has a sizable community of game developers have really good meetups that you can take not only to meet publishers but also to meet other developers and share ideas. I wanted to go quickly after to the audience, but I have a question before that. As we're talking about AI edition and we talk a lot about technology, how do you think that all this, not only AI, but the UGC platforms, the no-code platforms, there are so many technological innovations that are happening right now. How will this impact the indie development? Is it an advantage or a hinder or none of the above? What do you think?
Who wants to jump into this one first? There's sharks in these waters.
Headwinds can be opportunities, but I think there's a real balance to strike. So for us as a studio, part of my job is to look around the corner, and for the team, it's to explore, not explore to take away, but explore to create efficiency. That said, we're a game studio, and I think I got to be careful on how I navigate this.
No, just go for it.
No, we don't know where things are going to go, and the reality is our industry has changed 10 times over in the last 10 years, and it's going to continue to change. If you spend all your time just looking at changes, you're not going to spend any time building the products. I think that's the best way to put it. So for us as a company, yes, we look around the corner and we make sure that we're informed so that if the change becomes something permanent, positive or negative, that we're able to adapt. But we also got to focus on making great games.
I'll jump in on the AR one because I know that one is very controversial these days. But for our studio, honestly, as a designer, my artistic capacity is stick figures. I can draw maps on graph paper and stuff, but having AR has allowed me to communicate. You may not use it for the actual game itself, but my ability to go to an artist and say, okay, here's sort of what I'm thinking with a representation I can generate. Design is all about communication. That's the number one key part of being a designer, and using some of those tools for that has definitely helped that pipeline and helped communication between our departments. So I think you should look at how you can use it beyond just, can we ship with AI-generated stuff?
I'm not just going to answer about AI. I'm just in general. I think, again, the community in terms of the industry community events like here, where you can actually talk to fellow indies, fellow companies, is important because you get the insights of. Thinking back of the times when, all these ad networks were out there, it was like a jungle, right? And it still is. So if you wanted to run after each of these SDKs that are out there, you're not going to be able to get really any development done anymore, right? You're just going to be integrating SDKs. So that's clearly not the right approach. So, yeah.
I say it's a tool in a toolbox. Any tool can be positive or negative, but also if you learn to rely far too much on one tool and you only use that, you're going to have a real hard time if that tool breaks.
Good one. I wanted to ask if the audience had any questions before I continue.
What do you recommend for indies in order to make sure that they survive past their first game?
Low burn rate.
Plan for launch plus 6 months, plus 8 months, plus a year. What's I think the question that I think gets most developers that I speak to is, what do you do with your game year 3? what are you going to do with it? What's your plan for year 3? And most of them say, well, I plan until launch, and then I'm going to just kind of see what happens. If you don't have a goal, you've already failed.
Also, you can get a lot of reuse out of stuff from your previous games. There's a lot that you probably built in your first game that if you design efficiently around it for your second game, you're going to get to market a lot quicker, which should help.
Okay. Do we have Derek?
So you guys talked about social media, both in the aspect of getting noticed by publishers as well as starting to build up a community. So obviously YouTube is a popular place for devlogs, and that's how you start getting a really big community. Then you have Twitter, which is sort of like indie devs showing their technical capacity. So what platforms do you recommend for building communities versus getting noticed by publishers?
I like Discord, but I know those guys, so I'm biased.
We run our whole company through Discord. Like, I love...
Shout out to Discord.
Yeah,
right?
Seriously.
If you don't have a Discord already, go home right now and set one up.
Yeah, our in-game community actually has a Discord as well. So, you know, I'm trying to caution size here, and not create too much. Put it everywhere, see what lands, and then focus on the ones where you're seeing growth, I think is probably a good way to put it.
But I wanted to follow up on something on Discord. Okay, I'm an indie developer. I create a Discord. How do I attract people to it? Because Discording itself is not a discovery tool. So what would be then the discovery tool?
I think so. I'm going to jump in because, you know, our YouTube channel has like 3-some-odd million people who subscribe, and really, as devs, anybody who's doing a YouTube channel, anyone who's doing any of these things wants content. You are content. Look for somebody who's got 10, 20,000 subscribers who's talking about games and offer, like, just write them. Usually they'll have a way to contact them. Write them and be like, hey, I'm happy. Do you want to have me hop on and I can talk about making indie games? And a lot of the time, they're just really glad to not have to figure out what next week's episode is. And then once you do that and you get a little traction, then the person with 50,000 subs is going to be interested, and so on up, and just work your way up that ladder. It's a lot of work, but you can do it. And then at the end of each of those episodes, be like, find us on Discord, right?
And for us, I'd also think outside of gaming. Like, everyone thinks you're looking for your players in games through the game community, but think outside of gaming. So for us, building a weed game, we went and found like the weed producers, and then we found their social sites, and then we went and did interviews with them. So we connected with our community and then tied it back. So if they had a Facebook page, we'd build a page, we'd go talk with them, they'd shout us out, and that would slowly migrate their community over to us. And ideally, both people with same interests, but then also transferring over to gaming.
I have one, I think, my time is up. I have one last question then. To finish this, what is your final advice if there is anything that you still think that we didn't cover in here? So if someone here is saying either is a student trying to get a game, or like we know there were a lot of layoffs and they decided to start their own company and their own game development, what is your advice for them to start with the right foot and with a better chance of survival?
Be born rich.
I think passion, community are kind of the key elements that are very important.
Enjoy the ride. Financial success isn't guaranteed, so you really got to go in it because that's what you want to do, not because you're looking just for an outcome. Value the people that choose to go on the ride with you and the team. Remember, time is your most valuable asset, so make sure that you're focusing on your time on the why in your life, and why doesn't just need to be your game.
I'm just going to add to that. Be very careful about who you choose to bring on board, because you're not going to have a lot of resources. And, you know, each person you bring on board as the CEO of one of these companies, you're kind of responsible for. You've told them, I'm going to do everything I can to make it. And so just make sure you're bringing on the right people, and make sure you're bringing on people as you need them, and that you're ready for them, and that you have things for them to do to be productive and make sure this company is successful.
Don't be a jerk.
It's a good one.
Like the simplest way, like I've been doing gaming for 25 years and some of the people I've known for 10, 15, 20 years. And I still hang out with these people and still talk with them. And if I need something or if I have a question or they've done something or they have a contact, if you're a nice person and you're willing to help and you're really like, hey, how can I help you? They'll kind of have the same attitude towards you. But if you're a jerk, they're going to be a jerk right back. And frankly, in this industry, if you're a jerk, you get spit out real quick.
And there's lots of ups and downs. I've seen people who, had a hit, were a jerk, and then their next thing didn't go so well, and they had a really hard time finding somebody to help them with their third thing. So,
and I would like to add to finish, be generous. Like this is an industry that giving to people what you would like to get back without expecting anything back is key. So pay your dues, help people, introduce people, people will introduce you to, and it becomes a really nice environment to work on. Okay? Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.